The New York sky was painted with strokes of amber and gray that morning, as if the city itself sensed something unusual was about to happen. Outside the Langston Global Building, 45 floors of steel, glass, and power, reporters swarmed like bees around the marble steps. A podium had been set up beneath a large glass arch, and security stood unusually still, watching the media prepare with a strange hush over the scene. William Langston was scheduled to speak at 9 a.m. He hadn't made a public appearance in over a year, and when William Langston went silent, Wall Street paid attention. At 8:59, the doors opened. He stepped out. No entourage, no assistant fixing his tie, just him. And that was the first sign something was off. He wore a simple navy suit, no tie, his white shirt unbuttoned just enough to remind everyone this man no longer needed to impress. His salt and pepper hair was brushed back casually, and a leather notebook hung loosely in his hand. He looked lighter somehow, as if a burden had fallen off. He stepped up to the podium, cleared his throat, and began. "I won't keep you long, and I won't be taking questions." The crowd shifted, cameras flashing. "You've all followed my journey, from my first app coded in my parents' garage to the day Langston Global went public and turned a 26-year-old into your favorite headline." A few chuckles. "You've seen the rise, the scandals, the takeovers, the wins, the magazine covers, but you haven't seen the promise, the one I made long before any of this mattered." He paused, letting the silence settle. The world seemed to hold its breath. "So here it is. I'm giving it all away." A murmur rolled through the crowd. He continued calmly, almost serenely. "The company, the assets, the houses, the jets, all of it. Every share, every patent, every diamond watch tucked away in vaults I haven't opened in years. Gone. Effective immediately. Most of it already transferred. The rest will follow. You'll ask why, and you'll speculate. But let me save you the time. Because it's time, and because promises must be kept." He closed the notebook, looked out over the stunned crowd, and smiled. A soft, peaceful smile no one had seen on his face in decades. Then he turned and walked away. And William Langston was never seen in public again. The media didn't know what to do with it. Some claimed it was a marketing stunt for a new product. Others said he was sick, dying, that he had cancer, Alzheimer's, or maybe he'd found God. But none of those theories held water when the documents started surfacing. Real transfers, legal filings, ownership changes. Langston Global stock had been broken into over 100 separate parcels, gifted to small businesses, immigrant families, schools, even janitors and former employees who'd once cleaned his labs or poured his coffee. His Malibu estate, handed over to a local group helping teens recover from opioid addiction. His Manhattan penthouse, donated to a shelter for single mothers and domestic abuse survivors. Private islands, given to environmental groups and indigenous tribes. His entire car collection, auctioned for hospital funds. Quietly, anonymously. Every few days, a new headline popped up. Langston's yacht now floating clinic in the Caribbean. Former intern becomes millionaire overnight after receiving company shares. Homeless veteran, given condo. Business grant from unknown donor, all traced back to Langston Holdings. And yet still, no one knew why. Until a man named Curtis Hendricks, Langston's former personal accountant, broke his silence. He'd received no payout, no instructions, only a handwritten letter months earlier, delivered in a plain envelope. "Curtis, if this finds you, it means I've finally stopped being a coward. There's something I promised someone when I was young. I failed her for years, but now I'm keeping it. Help me finish what I started. You'll know what to do." Signed only, W. Curtis admitted he didn't know who her was, but he followed the instructions anyway. He started making calls, quiet transfers, arranged donations with no attribution, no charities, no interviews, just impact. Then something strange started happening. More and more recipients came forward, not just amazed by the generosity, but by one repeating detail. Each person had received a note, always short, always handwritten, sometimes on the back of a receipt, sometimes on expensive stationery, but all signed the same way, just two words: "He promised." The letter was written in fountain pen, the ink slightly faded, the loops of each word carefully measured, like someone had taken his time with every sentence. Margaret once told me love doesn't end when someone dies. It just changes form. I didn't understand it then. I do now. If you're reading this, you're one of the few who ever knew me before the world did. You knew Will, not William Langston, CEO, not Langston Global's founder, but the boy who sat cross-legged on your dorm floor reading Neruda and pretending to understand Rilke. The librarian's hands trembled, her glasses fogged with tears. She remembered him, of course. Who could forget a boy like Will? He was awkward, charming, arrogant when it didn't matter, and quiet when it did. He carried ambition like other boys carried guitars or basketballs, close to the chest but always shining through. And Margaret was the only one who could ever slow him down. They were an odd pair. She studied literature and history. She wrote poems in the margins of her notebooks, always in ink, never pencil. He was already chasing code and algorithms, dreaming of machines that could talk and think. But it worked. For 2 years, they were inseparable. Midnight debates on rooftops, cheap wine in paper cups, secret kisses in library stacks, promises made in whispers under a shared umbrella. And then the job offers came. The venture capitalists, the pitch meetings, the flight to Silicon Valley that he said was just for the summer. He never came back. At first she understood. She even cheered him on from afar. But as the headlines grew, Langston, the next tech titan, from dorm room to billionaire, his letters became fewer. Her name faded from his orbit like a star swallowed by dawn. She never told anyone how much it broke her. Years passed. Margaret didn't chase after him. She never wanted to be the woman behind the genius. She chose a quieter life, teaching, writing, volunteering. But the cancer came early, quiet, ruthless. It stole her strength, her voice, her hair. Still, she wrote, short stories, essays, journal entries, hundreds of them. And in nearly everyone, in some form or another, he appeared. Not as the man the world worshipped, but as the boy who once promised her that one day he would use all his gifts not for greed, but for good. It was a silly promise, she used to say with a laugh, but she believed in it, and in him, even after he forgot her, especially then. When the hospice nurse, Hannah, read the stories to her each night, Margaret smiled faintly. "Do you think he ever remembers me?" she once whispered. "Every day, I'm sure," Hannah replied. And when Margaret felt the end coming, she scribbled a note and asked Hannah to keep it safe. "If he ever finds his way again, please tell him this. I waited, but not with bitterness. I always knew you would remember, and I always believed you would choose love. Thank you, Will. You kept your promise. M.M." Hannah had held on to the note for over a year, unsure where or how to send it. But when she saw William Langston's name all over the news, when she heard the words he promised echo across the internet, she knew. Meanwhile, the world was unraveling the mystery. Langston's former college roommate confirmed Margaret and William's relationship. A handful of classmates remembered them fondly. One even recalled the poetry reading, where Will publicly declared, "I don't want to build a company unless it helps someone like her sleep better at night." But then it became clearer. William didn't just fall in love with Margaret. He became who he was because of her. The idea of using technology to empower, not exploit, that was her. The dream of equity, of justice, of kindness scaled. That was her heart, echoed through him. And when he left her behind, he didn't just lose a person, he lost his compass. For decades, he chased success, built an empire, sat on panels, signed deals, amassed more money than he could ever spend. And yet something in him always felt unfinished. Until one day, a letter from a hospice nurse arrived, a letter that brought him to his knees. He read Margaret's final words beneath a sycamore tree in his California estate, alone, just as he'd feared he'd die. But that letter changed everything. He wept for an hour, and when the tears dried, he walked inside, opened a clean notebook, and began writing down names. Names of people he'd forgotten. Names of those he wanted to remember. Names of those who'd helped him. Long before the cameras, the cash, the corporate takeovers. And at the top of that list, he wrote one name, Margaret. That was the beginning of the trail, the start of the promise. Not a marketing ploy, not a PR campaign, but the last purest attempt of a man trying to be worthy of the love he had once been given so freely. And so the librarian in Montana, after reading the letter, placed it in a frame. Not for herself, but for everyone who came into the library lost or wandering. Next to it, she pinned a small sign that simply read, "He promised. So we remember, so we pass it on." Snow fell lightly on the streets of Vermont that winter, painting the sleepy towns in quiet elegance. The world by then had all but given up on ever finding William Langston. His name had slipped from the trending lists. The frenzy of "he promised" notes had calmed, transforming from a viral sensation into something gentler, a movement of anonymous kindness that quietly rippled across communities. But in the town of Brattleboro, inside a small used bookstore called the Wren's Nest, something unexpected happened. The owner, a widow named Eliza, received a plain cardboard box with no return address. Inside were 5 things: a first edition of Neruda's 20 love poems and a song of despair, a folded, ink-stained Stanford campus map, a small, worn photograph of 2 students under a tree, a check for exactly $1, and one letter, sealed in ivory paper, with her name written in sweeping cursive, to Eliza Carter, Margaret's sister. Eliza hadn't heard the name Langston in years, but she knew the photo instantly. That boy beside her sister, grinning with wind-tossed hair and a far-off look in his eyes. That was Will, her sister's Will. With trembling hands, she opened the letter and read, "Dear Eliza, I'm sorry it took me this long. I've spent most of my life chasing echoes and forgetting the voice that first called me forward. Margaret saved me once, not with money, not with power, but with belief, pure and foolish and beautiful belief that I could do something good in this world. And I didn't just fail her, I erased her. I chose noise over meaning, growth over grace. But she never stopped believing, even when I did. She said love changes form when we die. I finally understand what she meant. Every home I give away, every debt I erase, every future I lift, I feel her in it. I see her handwriting in the faces of strangers. I know now, I've never truly been alone. Tell your children about her, not about me. Tell them about the woman who loved a boy with too many ideas and not enough sense. Tell them she forgave him anyway. I'm not leaving behind a foundation or a monument, just footprints. And maybe that's enough. Love always will." Eliza pressed the letter to her heart and cried. Not for Margaret, because she had always known her sister's heart was stronger than time. Not for William, because he had finally found his way home. She cried because somehow, in a world so tangled with pride and ego and self-preservation, 2 people had kept a promise that spanned decades and death itself. Elsewhere, the world moved on. Langston Global had long since been broken up and absorbed into new startups, most of them run by the very people he had gifted the shares to. No one could agree on what to call the phenomenon he started. Some dubbed it the Quiet Rebellion, others the Margaret Effect. But most just called it what it was, a promise kept. In small towns and big cities, people kept leaving notes, in coat pockets, in mailboxes, on windshields and windowsills. He promised, but more than that, they began leaving new notes, on hospital walls, in school lockers, in soup kitchens. I promised, we promised, for her, for someone I forgot, until now. And so the legacy spread, not as a brand, not as a slogan, but as a quiet ripple of memory and hope. No one ever confirmed where William Langston had gone. Some claimed he lived in a monastery in Japan, sweeping temple floors. Others said he walked the deserts of New Mexico, living off the grid, speaking only when spoken to. But others believed something simpler, that Will had found a cabin near a lake, a stack of Margaret's journals beside the fireplace, and a garden full of wildflowers she once said she'd plant if she ever got the chance. And there, every morning, he read one of her stories aloud. To no one, and to everyone. Because love, after all, doesn't end. It just changes form. Years later, a stone bench appeared beneath a tree on the Stanford campus, the very spot where a young boy once read poetry to a girl with ink-stained fingers. There was no plaque, no dedication, only a single carving on the backrest, engraved so faintly you'd miss it if the light wasn't just right. 4 simple words. He remembered. She forgave.